Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the biggest business developments of the week, their context, their relevance and policy impact. I'm Govindraj, Ethiraj. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley last week spoke of simplifying tax administration and laws ahead of the Union Budget 2016. Mr. Jaitley said simple laws would ensure that there would not be excessive litigation and a simpler system would reduce appeals to the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Later, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, speaking at a function in New Delhi, questioned tax incentives for corporates. According to him, the total revenue loss from incentives to corporate taxpayers was over 62,000 crore rupees. Now, the Finance Minister too has promised a phase-out of corporate tax deductions and exemptions. Simplifying of taxes is a long process and the first steps perhaps have been taken. But what needs to be done is the question, and what is the best way to phase it out so taxpayers can feel the impact of these steps? Moreover, what should taxpayers, individual or business, expect in a simplified tax regime? To discuss that, I'm joined by two guests today, Aseem Chawla, partner at MPC Legal, and Prashant Agarwal, Director, Indirect Tax at PwC. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. So, Aseem, let me begin with you. When we talk about simplicity, what are we really saying? What does it mean to me, an individual or a business, as I just said, asked earlier?
Yeah, to us, to an individual taxpayer, simplicity means that I ask a simple question, how much tax I have to pay, I get a simple answer without less ifs and buts, and I know that the tax treatment is certain, and I will not be questioned for something which is out of the book. I should know the fact that the prescription is simple, the forms are simple, and there is less hassle.
Right. So, where are we in that journey? Now, this is a commitment that has been made several times and some work has been done, but we've clearly not achieved what we really set out to.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Neither we are certain nor we are clear which are the two important C's in any tax policy, that your taxes or tax regime should be certain and at the same time you should be clear. Neither we are certain at this point in time nor we are clear. I mean the tax act or the tax statute has become a cobweb of so many provisos, sections, subsections, and therefore for an answer either you have to wait for a court's pronouncement, and the fact that the legislature also loves to tinker with those pronouncements. So, for a common man, still, if you look at the entire scheme of the act, it's a long journey.
Right. Okay. I'm going to ask you to illustrate that in a little bit. But Prashant, you look after indirect tax. So let's get a sense from what does, first of all, indirect tax mean at a very general level, and what could we be doing if we want to really simplify the incidence of indirect tax?
Yeah. So indirect tax in a very simplified way is any transaction which you undertake and a tax on that transaction. So for instance, when you sell goods, today you pay VAT. So let's say if I go to a shop and buy clothes, the bill has a VAT on it. If I take services, I pay service tax. So indirect taxes are transaction-based taxes which are applicable and hit the common man directly because everything can be recovered from the common man specifically. Now, as far as the simplification goes, as I said, there are multiple indirect taxes on different kind of transactions, and that hampers or in a way results in tax cascading effect.
Give us an example.
So for instance, let's say I am an industry which runs a BPO and I buy equipments and everything. I pay VAT on it. I can't take a credit of it. So it hits my business cost and in a way expensifies my whole services to that extent because I can't take the credits of those taxes. So in a way, it adds to my business cost per se.
So, to use your example again, so why should there be a problem with my paying tax on goods that I purchase versus the service tax that I pay
There's no problem in it. The problem is the multiple taxes that are applicable on these transactions. So for instance, you go to a hair salon, very simple example. They buy equipments, they pay VAT on it, but they can't take a credit of that VAT when they charge service tax from you. So that VAT in a way is being charged from you in the form of the price that they're charging. So that's where the simplification is required from an indirect tax standpoint. And that's why you call goods and services tax as one of the biggest tax reform, not only for a business house, but also for an end customer, because it would simplify the whole chain. You pay one tax and the whole chain will be taxed only on the value addition purposes.
Right.
So you don't have taxes inbuilt as part of the price.
So how would GST work in the case of this hair salon?
So in the case of hair salon, for example, you will have all the equipments which they buy, they pay GST on it, they take the credit of whatever GST they pay, and then they charge you on the output of their services, the GST. So they would be able to take the credit of whatever GST they would have paid, and nothing of those GST would have formed part of the price that is being charged to you. So in a way, whatever tax was earlier being formed part of the price is no more there.
Right.
And hence you may end up having a more simplified version of the tax regime as well as the benefit passed on to the
Right,
customer.
and we'll talk about GST in a
Sure,
moment because that's dependent on so many other reasons. Aseem, let me come back to you. So let's pick up one or two illustrations where when you talk about certainty, when you talk about simplicity, what is it that you're looking for in maybe one or two strains of tax collection where you would like to see things happen?
Okay, let's take two situations. One, I am a salaried taxpayer, I am an individual taxpayer. I would want a situation where I know that these are my available set of exemptions, these are my available set of deductions, if at all there are some in the scheme of the Act. In most of the cases, you have the tax deduction at source coming into picture. So what I get is pretty much tax paid salary or tax paid emoluments, and thereafter, if there is some refund through electronic platform, I should get my refund. If there are some additional taxes, I should pay. And the whole paranoia of not going to the tax department in an electronic platform situation, which more or less has got mitigated still, the sheer thought of going to tax department doesn't really amuse a lot of people.
Right.
And the other set of situation, I am a small trader, a small manufacturer, maybe a hair salon situation. There should be a larger basket of presumptive taxation. That's what the wish list could be. But at this point in time, to get to a situation where I know how much tax I have to pay is not an easy task. So
right. So would you say that knowing how much tax I owe the government, whether as an individual or as a business, is perhaps one of the biggest challenges?
Well, if it is a challenge, maybe for the salaried employees or
simpler,
for individual taxpayer, you can differentiate and say, okay, now it's relatively simpler. But as you move up the value chain, so to speak, well, look at the profile of litigation. I mean, we are having litigations which are inconsequential. Whether these earnings are taxed in year 1 or year 2 is a major bane of litigation. Whether I am entitled to certain deductions is a major bane of litigation. Whether I am entitled to those reliefs which the Honorable Prime Minister says we need to revisit is a major source of litigation.
Right. So so the problem seems to be, at least as I understand you, with the exemptions and with the reliefs that people get, whether individually or as organizations. So if you were to remove them, arguably the tax system gets simplified, doesn't it?
It gets simplified, yes, and tax
or phase them out as we've been talking about.
But then you must understand, and dare I say, corporate India or the general ethos that tax arbitrage is something which we love. Now, business is premised on tax exemptions and tax deductions, or is there a genuine case of business, so to speak? So when Prime Minister says, or when we hear from the policy makers that let's revisit them, it's not going to happen so soon. Tax arbitrage has become part of our DNA. It's going to take time for corporate India to understand that there has to be a meritorious situation of you to carry on your business.
So in this way, isn't this becoming a catch-22 then? You're saying that, we have to think carefully as we tread on incentives and exemptions.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we're also acknowledging that they are the very source of the problem.
Yes, and therefore one has to make a very clear analysis of what needs to be there, what needs to be done away now, what needs to be done over a period of time. And here, certainty has to be there. If you announce something today that this is going to get phased out over a period of time, then phasing out should not become a matter of litigation. That how this phasing out should happen. And also, for the moment, I'm not talking about the foreign community because they have their own host of challenges and problems. And India has clearly missed the bus, at least to begin with, on transfer pricing. So if we were to keep that out of the discussion for the moment, tax arbitrage and how to deal with it is one aspect of it. What the Honorable Finance Minister said at that Platinum Jubilee celebration of our tax tribunal was that I want to make things simpler. The tax administration should become simpler. But that requires change of mindset, Govind. Somebody who wants to go to tax department should not be scared or frightened enough. Right?
And that indeed is the case, you're saying.
Certainly.
Right. Okay, so let's get an indirect tax view. I mean, so we've talked about, let's say, the challenges created because of the entire regime of exemptions and incentives. But what is it in indirect tax? Is GST I know we've been talking about it a lot, but is that the silver bullet that's going to solve all our problems?
It won't solve all the problems at the
in
first
indirect
go,
tax,
but it would be a major problem resolution. But it will take time. Let's see how GST comes up and pans out. That's the first thing. But what is expected out of GST is, because of that multiple level of taxes going away, that in a way will simplify the indirect tax regime in the first go. The other important objective that the government is trying to meet out of that is to remove or prune the exemptions which are there, to make them as minimum as possible. The work has been in progress in the indirect taxes. So, for example, in service tax, there was a major change in the type of exemptions that were available, and they were pruned down. And we expect them to perhaps be simplified even further in this budget also. So that is the one of the aspects that will be taken care of as part of the GST regime. The other important thing in case of indirect taxes is the small taxpayers, because you have assessees starting in service tax from a threshold of 10 lakh rupees. Now, they may not add to your government's kitty of revenue, but they do add a lot of burden on the administration while looking at the taxpayers specifically. So GST is looking at improving upon that threshold limit, let's say bring it to 25 lakhs or 50 lakhs. That would help in removing the normal or giving relief to the small taxpayers in the indirect tax, which fall within the indirect tax ambit. We also expect that perhaps in this budget, one may see some steps being taken toward that in the service tax law also, where perhaps the threshold limit may be improved on or increased from 10 lakhs to 25 lakhs, and therefore giving relief to the small taxpayers. So that would help.
Right. Okay. Aseem, let me quickly, I mean, so if you were to build on that illustration further, you talked about, let's say, the predictability being one part and the certainty and predictability being part. What else would you, lay equal emphasis on, when it comes to, again, a business taxpayer?
A business taxpayer, my tax code should be relatively certain. My tax code should not force me into litigation, which I call as forced litigation, where the orders passed by the assessing officer are questioned, where I don't have to constantly be under the threat that, oh, if there's an order, perhaps the revenue is going to challenge it. Let's not forget, revenue is one of the largest contributory of forced litigation. Look at the High Court volumes of pending litigation. It's largely litigations preferred by the tax department against the orders passed by the tribunal, which is hailed as one of the most pragmatic institutions. The other is faith in the administration. When Finance Minister talks of simplifying administration, then you're looking at tax administration and the income tax department as such. I should have faith that if I go there, I'll get a reasonable opportunity, not what it is said in the tax code. I will be heard, my problems would be well understood, and I would not be told that, look, we have something known as target. So regardless of your meritorious claim, I wish to help you, but I can't help you. And therefore, things like forced recovery, not entertaining genuine pleas of stay of demand, not entertaining situations which require some consideration. Nobody looks forward going to tax department.
Right. Okay. Okay. So we will talk a little more about that, but we need to take a break on Policy Watch. We'll come back and we'll ask what needs to be done in future and how can we really make those steps very simple. Stay with us. Welcome back to Policy Watch. How indeed can we simplify our tax laws, policies and administration? So before we went in, we were saying that, the various kinds of points of interaction and how do we try and address each of those. So, we've had a couple of committees being set up, right? So we've had the Parthasarathi Shom Committee, for instance, which talked about overall tax administration reform. It's talking about merging the CBDT, the Central Board of Direct Taxes, and the Central Board of Excise and Customs, more use of permanent account number or PAN number, abolishing the position of Revenue Secretary. And then you also have the Ishwaran Committee. So different committees set up at different times all seem to be aiming at less tax administration and perhaps more simplicity. So why is this not happening, and or if not, what can we do about it?
Well, in the normal course, you should have only committees for very path-breaking situations. I mean, very recently the trends of committee has proliferated. We had Justice Shah committee looking at the FII MAT issue. Now Justice Ishwar has given a 70-page recommendation, and then before that you had the TARC committee. Well, the brighter side of it is that somebody is conscious of the fact that there are anomalies, there are situations which need to be addressed. Let's take a wider perspective. The grey side of it is that if you are going to have too many committees, then the faith in your own tax planning legislation wing of the apex tax administration body, I mean, is that faith put to some sort of a doubt or test, and for everything you would have committees in place and then follow up of that committee should not become a situation where people who perhaps can quote unquote lobby, can move forward, give their recommendations, and the small taxpayer is maybe heard far and few. So having committees to an extent for only path-breaking situations. I mean,
And what's your sense of what has been done from the committees that have submitted reports till date in the area of tax? Of course.
Well, Dr. Shom's committee report came at a time after that we had the new dispensation, and till now we haven't heard much on it. Let's not forget there is Dr. Shom's committee report even on taxation of indirect transfer, the great Vodafone thing also, right? And now after Justice Ishwar's committee, suddenly we are hearing that, oh, Dr. Shom's committee report is also there in place and we are pretty cognizant of it. How it gets translated, I mean, look at the timing of it. We're talking this at the eve of the budget. I mean, we are all
therefore hopeful that something will happen.
Yeah, something will happen, but should not result in a tendency of having too many committees.
Okay, Prashant?
No, I think
Translation of all of this into action.
yes, absolutely, and some of that was put to action in indirect tax field for that matter, wherein some of the recommendations of Dr. Shom's committee's report were put to action also. But some of the relevant actions have yet not been taken, and we hope as an industry that those actions are also taken up.
Give me an example.
So like special valuation branch scrutiny, which is like if you import goods into India, you have related party transactions which are scrutinized by a specific SVB, as we call them. Now that takes a lot of time because there are a lot of players, importers involved, and hence a lot of assessments remain provisional for years. Now that is really not required, and world over we don't see too many of those SVBs being taking place. So Dr. Shom's report also says that you should do away with such SVBs, and whenever you think that the imports are not at right price, you have all the audits that you do as far as the officers are concerned, and they should pick it up. So those sort of changes would help the industry also. These are business impediments. They create business impediment which can be removed easily and would not harm the tax revenue in much way. So those are sort of steps which we will hope that are taken up by the government.
Right. So let me take a step backward. So, like merging the CBDT and CBEC. So, I mean, I'm assuming what it means is therefore you have one body, you have one set of officers, and your point of interaction as a consumer or as a citizen or as a business person is somewhat unified. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, perhaps not the interface would be the same people, because you have different laws and you have different experts who are administrating those laws specifically. But when you merge these two committees or these two bodies, one important thing that happens is you have interface of the data, which is very important from a tax revenue angle, because today we don't see an income tax officer really interacting with a sales tax officer or a service tax officer.
Yeah.
The moment you merge both the bodies, the policies are such which are not poles apart from an income tax.
So you're saying
or
it has no
indirect tax
benefit to the individual. It only benefits the.
It benefits the government, but also benefits the tax administration to a certain extent, because you may not have policies or the clarifications which are poles apart from each other. Those sort of things may not happen. They may be synced with both the laws. So in that sense, yes, it may help.
Okay. So let me get a quick wish list as well. Aseem, so what are you expecting or hoping that Budget 2016 will do?
Well, let's concentrate to basics. Try and widen the tax base. Take baby steps, right? On the aspects of exemption deductions, you already have made a commitment last year that I want to reduce the corporate tax rate, bring it in line to 25%, which the international rate is. So you have to phase out certain exemption or deduction. Don't take one step forward, two steps back. Have a certain framework. Honor the commitment on that, what promise got last year. Widen the tax base.
Look so widening, I mean, it's almost like a holy grail, right? We've been chasing it for a long time. So.
It's a holy grail. Look at the current topography of taxpayers. I mean, for a country like ours, 3.5%, just about 3.5% is our tax base. And out of that, 10% are senior and very senior citizens. And majority of taxpayers are filing tax returns below 5 lakhs of it. So therefore, you're constantly
many of them are just employed.
And therefore, you're constantly pushing the existing taxpayers to pay more in the current challenge.
So how do we push that envelope further?
Well, the income tax department, both and including the indirect tax department. So let's say the revenue as a whole or Union of India as a whole has got tremendous data available with it. And they get data in various forms, AIR, quarterly returns, banks, intermediaries who are obligated to submit data quarterly, monthly, so on and so forth. Mine that data, right? And therefore add taxpayers. After all, people are spending, people are consuming. I mean, you've made an announcement, 2 lakhs plus cash purchases, you need to give your PAN card or so on and so forth. So try and mine data, try and improve the tax base. Of
so
course,
are you in agreement with all of that? Showing a flashing your PAN card every time you flash
well,
your credit card?
I did speak with small traders. They believe that this will have a serious impact.
Right.
I mean,
think the
cash,
gold folks, for
yeah,
instance,
gold
feel
folks.
that.
I mean, cash is still king in the
Yeah.
country,
Yeah.
and it's a long way where we have a
Right.
complete banking inclusion. So try and add tax base over a period of time. Take baby steps on exemptions and deductions. Right? Don't push the existing taxpayer that every year they have to pay more tax. Do empathize that they are working in a challenged macroeconomic situation. Try and look at the cause of existing litigation, which Justice Ishwar Committee has looked at it. But do not have too many committees. Stick to one. Give them a long
brief.
long brief, terms of reference, and try and follow it up over a period of time. But anything which is knee-jerk based on one incident or one phenomena will not do good. We've seen what happened in 2012. The repair work is still on.
Are you referring to Vodafone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Prashant, a quick wish list for budget 2016.
Yeah. So as far as the wish list is concerned, one is to have a clear path for GST. You've heard a lot for years and for last 2
So we
years.
know the path which is political. So we're obviously looking for a plan B now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one is to let us know where we are, not from a political perspective, but also from a perspective of legislation, because the industry is the biggest stakeholder, and you ask any of the industry player, they may not be really aware of what is going on as far as at the back door also from a GST perspective. Bring them in. We know that there are political issues. Let them be resolved by the government in their own way. But from a industry perspective, involve them much more from developing this GST law. Help them understand what are you thinking about. Probably give them the GST draft to ensure that you get the inputs from them, so that you give them time to really understand as well as be ready for GST as and when it comes in. So that's what we would think that should come up as part of the budget. The other things would be it could be that the finance minister may be thinking on increasing the service tax rate, because they need revenue at the end of the day. And also the service tax rates are today at 14 or 14.5%. If you include the Swachh Bharat cess, they may want to increase it to up to 16% to mop up the revenue.
That doesn't sound like good news, by the way. But yeah.
It may not sound like a good news, but it can happen.
Yeah.
But if it happens, it has to come with it the SENVAT credit, which is the main point wherein the credits come in. They need to be rationalized and they need to be simplified.
Right.
Today, the industry may be ready to pay a higher tax rate provided they get the credits. If you end up in the same regime, nobody would want to really increase the rate to 16%. So that's very important, that if you're thinking of increasing the rate, simplify the procedure to avail the credits, simplify the, because otherwise, as my colleague has been saying here, that there are a lot of interpretation issues. Those should not come in specifically. So simplify those procedures at their part. The other important thing, although a very small part, is Swachh Bharat cess. It came in with a very good intent of 0.5% only, but unfortunately you don't get the credits. You can't pay it through the tax that you've already paid. Now those should be simplified. It only adds to tax cascading effect. When you're looking at GST to be very good and improving on tax cascading effect, then Swachh Bharat cess is only in the other direction altogether. So you need to take the right steps, ensure that the industry is not hurt with it. It's a good intent, but at the same time, you should allow the credit of it, allow to take the offset of that particular cess.
So let me get a sum up from both of you. If I were to come back to you, Aseem, and say, a dream tax administration and regime, not a heaven, a regime, what would it be for you?
Well,
in one or two sentences.
Yeah, two sentences. One, I should go to the tax department fearless. I should meet the tax officer. He should treat me as a collaborator in building the nation as part of the economy, tax collector and tax gatherer. And second, what JRD said, that I don't want a prosperous India, I want a happy India. So taxpayer should be happy at the end of the day.
Right.
We don't have a situation
let me
where
put
we
the
have
shoe on the other foot. So what should people do? Obviously, everyone is not an honest taxpayer either.
Yeah.
So how should people be responding to this call?
Well, morality and taxes have been a subject matter of debate, and we have rims of literature written on it. But inculcation of ethics and values will help in understanding that after all it's an important engine
citizens
of
should
nation building.
Appreciate the challenges that we are facing as a country because of low tax revenues, and therefore do our bit.
Yeah, and the government should not tom-tom on the fact that, oh, here's our fiscal discipline being met. I mean, the genuine taxpayer on ground needs a tax department which can take care of their grievances, and not because government's scorecard on fiscal discipline has been met. Therefore, that's a great achievement. It has its great significance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Last word, Prashant.
Pay tax on all transactions. That's the first thing. You pay tax, you develop your country, no doubt about it. But don't add taxes on taxes. You don't have to pay tax on tax. Pay tax on each value addition, on each transaction. Allow people to take their credits wherever they need to, and pass on the benefit to the customer. That's the best way of doing it.
And
Everyone pays the
that's your
tax.
dream tax regime, which
That-
of course
that has to be,
And
absolutely.
GST is somewhere above that, I'm assuming.
Yes, hopefully that's where the government is aiming to with the GST also.
Right, and that's a good hope and note to end on. Thank you so much. We've run out of time on Policy Watch. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.